With the projected 2022 figures, the number of poor persons in Nigeria has had a 4-year increase of 14.7% from 2018-2019. 2019 figures of 82.1 million to the projected 95.1 million in 2022. It was stated that the poverty rate had been aided by the impact of the COVID-19 crisis and Nigeria's growing population. The high food prices have triggered global crisis that is driving millions more into extreme poverty, magnifying hunger and malnutrition. According to the World Bank report, COVID-19 pandemic caused a major setback in global poverty reduction, and now rising food and energy crises fueled by climate shocks and conflicts have halted global recovery. The country was also listed among 3 other African countries on a high alert for starvation and death. And then the report that came in June 2022 also warned of humanitarian actions on 20 countries where it is anticipated that hunger will get worse from the months of September 2022. To discuss poverty index and food crisis in Nigeria is the national coordinator, the National Social Investment Program, the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management and Social Development, a former special assistant to the president on social investment, Dr. Umar Buba Binde. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Every time we have this kind of conversation, it's always a difficult one, you know, to have a situation that you are not completely in control of, that is magnified by global situation. When I was doing a bit of read-up on this, to see that in the alert list we are classified with such country as Sudan, and you know, sort of triggers some kind of emotion in you if you had cause to travel the length of this country from Lagos to Maiduguri or from Sokoto to Cross River. I mean, the amount of arable lands that we have in this country versus the amount of hunger is just inexcusable. I would just allow you to speak to this issue and where we are in the light of these recent numbers that you know the World Bank is talking about.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just like you indicated, poverty is really a serious problem. Globally, you have over 150 countries that are classified as developing countries. And the sharpest index for classifying a country as a developing country is actually levels of poverty. And for a layman to understand what do we mean, poverty is not lack of richness. Poverty is multisectoral. Things are hitting you so much so that you are unhappy and you are despondent. So when a country has large populations of its own people who cannot drink clean water and are subjected to waterborne diseases, whose women cannot easily go to medical facilities to deliver well and go back home with less deaths of the mothers and the children, whose children have access to schools to go and build up their capacity. Countries where the food system is working to the extent that most people have access to quality food all the time, and so on and so forth. When you are lacking these elements, you are classified as a very unhappy country, and the index is poverty. Our country is suffering this at a level of nearly 40 to 43% in incidence. But comparatively, from 1999, when the levels were a little bit higher, around 70%, we have tried cascading through. First of all, you remember when Abacha was in control, he launched FIP to battle this. And then it cascaded to the Obasanjo era, when we had NAPEP to try to crush this. And then we descended to the Yaradua time, when he had his 7-point agenda. And when Jonathan took over, he launched SURE-P. And then now we have the Social Investment Program. So actually, our leaders are conscious of this problem. They are being very creative to launch things, but still the problem is there. Now, is compounded by so many other things, as you put it. We have global shocks, including COVID-19, and you see recently, flooding is destroying farms, it is killing people and killing animals, and you have insurgency, planting mines all over the place, stopping farmers to go into their farms. You have kidnappings that is actually charging systems negatively, that you cannot travel. So even if you produce the food, it cannot be moved. So we have all these elements mixed up, and really the president recognized this. 2015, he said, well, we cannot continue like this. This government is a people's government, and therefore we must do something, and we must do it differently. So that's why he came up with the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social, for the first time in the history of this country, that you have a dedicated ministry coordinating poverty eradication activities. And in the middle of it, he yanked the Social Investment Program from the Office of the Vice President into the program to say, this is now the icing on the cake to actually deal with this problem. And for me, women are normally very good in these social things, and to appoint a very young, active and proactive woman to manage this system is another plus for the sustainable strategy to deal with this. So our country is facing it, but our country is doing something too. And I can tell you, gradually, we are maturing into the dividend taking of these programs, and we're seeing a bit of progress that are manifesting as we implement these programs.
Okay. Now, how much impact, has the social investment program made, in the lives of Nigerians?
Well, the social investment program is very creative and innovative. It has 4 clusters. And the first cluster, which is the Empower, recognizes that if you give young people skills and competencies and training in productive ventures, and then encourage them to be able to establish their self-employment enterprises, possibly to employ others, then you have a chance of reducing unemployment, creating wealth, and reducing poverty. And I'm happy to report under that program, from 2016 when it started to date, we're dealing with directly young people between 1.5 to 2 million that has directly been engaged, and many of them have actually ended up establishing their micro enterprises. The second cluster is the Government Enterprise and Empowerment Program, which is a microcredit package for the first time in this continent, that a country has launched a microcredit facility where you do not have collateral, you do not have interest rate, and it is readily available literally to everybody, but targeting the vulnerable and the poor. And this is ranging between 50,000 naira up to 300,000 naira. Very easy to implement. Again, all the informal sector, the women making the dudu shoes, selling vegetable in the market and tomatoes, roasting and smoking fish are all part of the equation. Again, it is revamping the microeconomics and encouraging the growth of the GDP. The third cluster is the National Homegrown School Feeding Program, which recognizes that there are so many children of the poor who are out of school. And it is absolutely important to get these children back to school if we should have a future in the next 30, 40 years. And therefore the president approved that, come on, get out of there, document all the public schools where the children of the poor go, and then give them 1 quality meal per schooling day, so that they have a bit of rice, a bit of shaki, a bit of yam, a bit of potato, a bit of egg, and so on and so forth. That attracts children to school, keeps them in school, and you get something done. And I'm happy to report that under this program, we have approximately between 10 to 12 million children that are actually involved nationwide. All states in the country are actually benefiting from this. And finally, President said, if you cannot be trained, and if you cannot enjoy the credit, and you are not participating in the school feeding program, we have the 4th cluster, which is the conditional cash transfer. Very, very strategically, under the program, we are identifying all the poor and vulnerable households in this country, documented into a very, very dynamic database. Houses where you have widows, you have disabled people, you have children out of school, and so on and so forth. And each of these houses is advanced with a grant of 5,000 naira, just to encourage a better living. They are buying their kerosene, they are buying their salt, they are buying their Maggi, and so on and so forth. And I'm happy to report, as we speak, directly, we are actually advancing these grants to 2 million households in this country, translating to something like, at the rate of 4 people per house, 8 to 10 million Nigerians. But the database database now, we are now at the level of between 12 to 13 million households documented into a national social register, a very dynamic database, and which accounts probably between 40 to 50 million Nigerians. So the social investment program, we've started in 2016. We're beginning to understand with the environmental dynamics of our country, where we have challenges, where we're having progress, how do we amplify the progress, how do we minimize the challenges. So gradually it is maturing to the extent that the President has guided and directed the Honorable Minister to ensure that they work with the Honorable Minister of Justice to ensure that a law is enacted to ensure that the social investment program is established as an agency for sustainability.
Thank you very much for those insightful revelations, if you like. But I would like to take you on some of the comments you have made. You talked about making progress. I find it difficult to situate that with the recent figures that were released, that is showing that the number of people we have in that bracket is increasing from 40 million to now about 19.5, if you like, 20 million approximately. And I said it in the face of the daring fiscal challenges that we have in the country. Food inflations have perpetually stayed above 20%. You mentioned the flood situation that has wiped off thousands of hectares of farmland from Taraba to Kogi. And you know what that portends for us as a country in terms of food crisis. And I'm just wondering, in the face of this difficulty, for even proper salary earners, it is a major challenge. And what comes to my mind is, what can a household, probably 2 or 3 children, a man and a woman, what are they able to do with a 5,000 naira intervention and all of that? Do you think that whatever we are doing right now, sufficiently supports the households, to be able to brace to these daring economic fiscal challenges that we see in the country today?
Yeah, you've raised a number of questions, but I'll just use 2 examples to demonstrate to you how social projects are dynamic and how they change with time. Look at COVID. Before COVID, markets were open, schools were open, the towns and cities are bustling and moving, and then COVID hit, and we stopped. The markets were closed. Therefore, all the women that used to go in there every morning to sell their dawa, their bitter leaf and fish stopped, and they're in the house. All their children that were in schools, secondary schools, universities, primary schools, they used to eat there and have a bit of that, they were all at home and sitting there. All the keke napep drivers that used to move around stopped. Now, you can imagine the effect of that. Instantly, a spike of increase of people who hitherto were doing something and surviving, they have now dropped into the pot of poverty. These are the dynamics of numbers of poverty, and there are many issues. This flooding, you will see what is going to happen. A farmer who used to wake up in the morning, go to till their land, ensure that their vegetables are harvested, pick their tomatoes, take it to farm, now flooding has hit. All that is gone, he will drop into poverty. So that's how numbers, but you see, the idea for the social investment to ensure that it is an innovation of the federal government, but implementation is at the state, encouraging synergy, partnership, and cooperation is the way to go. Federal government alone cannot solve it. State government alone cannot solve it. Local government alone cannot solve it. So Nigeria and Nigerians must understand that these 12 states and the FCT must coagulate to start looking at one country. These 774 local government areas must coagulate to see that we're working with our partners for progress. These 360 members of the House of Reps at federal level must change their strategy from being only politicking to progressive for productivity. The 109 senators that we have at the federal level must also transform their thinking politically to ensure that their senatorial being elected leaders mean leaders for progress and productivity. This is the way to go. Many countries have deployed this strategy of synergy, partnership, complementarity, reduction of rivalry, don't create islands, and then you can work. This is where the National Social Investment Program is now aiming at. Every state has a focal person. Whether you are a party in the ruling or not ruling, the governor appoints the focal person. The office implementing the social investment program is totally in the state. But then all the data to do with the challenges and everything to be addressed by the program is generated from the bottom. We're deploying technology and training and capacity building to ensure that people's eyes are open to the dilemma our country faces. That is where the sustainability is required. So for me, social projects by experience or international best practice is not like driving a car or doing something explaining, ensuring a linear response. It will ripple based on the dynamics of the system. But a program of this nature means you must have people with capacity, people with commitment, people who are seeing this country as a country, and people who are encouraging others to participate positively.
I'd like you to just a quick follow-up before Zainab comes in. My worry, it's really around the impact. And in discussing impact in this context is about what is available to you, to make that kind of impact. That is why I raise those concerns. You are racing against factors that are not stable in themselves. They keep worsening. We talked about flood and all. And I'm happy that in the course of your response, you talked about government not being able to do it alone. And we know what the budget allocations are to you, even though you are now a full-fledged ministry. And so we know what challenges you are up against. And we're wondering if government, indeed, from what we see in the budget, from what is available to the government that is battling on so many fronts with debt service, with the critical infrastructures that are important to creating jobs and improving the economy, the government that is complaining about losing critical oil buyers, we are wondering if the structures are there to sustain what you get, even as miniature as it looks. Before we even start talking about scaling, are you working on anything that would engender that collaboration you talked about, or anything on the side of the law that we have seen with TED funds and UBEC that will guarantee some kind of minimum contribution from corporates or a percentage of our budget dedicated to this so that we can upscale whatever we are doing at this level to make the kind of impacts that are necessary? That is what I am interested in.
Well, that is a very, very important question. Literally, it can be summarized on where are you heading to when it comes to sustainability? How do you sustain these efforts to make sure that we progressively register the kind of impacts that we are now discussing about? You see, for me, every entity, from the person to the community to the country, you must have a SWOT analysis of your system. You must look at yourself and say, what are you strong in? Don't lose that. What are you weak in? Work on that. What opportunities do you have? Take it. What threats is facing you? Run away from it. This generically gives you a strategic planning. You see, poverty is a problem to this country. It is because of poverty that you actually see the easy community-based insurgency and insecurity that is popping up. I have not seen a country, and I have worked in many, where young people have skills and competencies. They are using those skills and competencies to take the opportunities in their countries, to employ themselves and create wealth, and still they go back home in the evening, take a shower, have dinner, and then say, let's go and kill people or let's go and steal. But that does not happen. It means when you work very hard on your young people, and they are calmed down, they are enjoying themselves, your insecurity will drop. Same thing when it comes to all the ills. The highest ill that we have in this country is that young people are coming together to say, oh, you have to divide this country, agitate and cause confusion. It's all because of despondency. So the country must realize that this is a very big problem. And first is that the country itself has to invest in it. Then whatever you invest, you utilize it judiciously. The judicious utilization of resources means that you have the skill, you have the competence, you are deploying technology, and you are very, your morale is high. So when people see that you, as a human being, you are well prepared, you are driving things that are positively, naturally, you will see partners coming to share the joy of progress with you. And that is how partnership comes. No private sector will come and partner with you if you are wasteful. Nobody will come and actually give you their resources when they see that you are corrupt and you are wasteful. So in the NSIP, the first and foremost thing is that we're using young people, very qualified. We're forging people to understand. We're minimizing arguments. We're creating networks. And God so kind, technology is readily available. People undermine the penetration of internet in this country. I was in Gombe. From Gombe driving to Yola, my hometown, I was on Zoom conference non-stop until I reached Numan. I never knew that the waves there are actually active. These are available. It is being used to enhance that. And lastly, you asked previously that 5,000 is very small. Let me tell you on two levels. 5,000 as money that you put in your pocket if you are in Abuja or Ibadan or Lagos or Kano may be small. But go to the market and steal 1,000 naira and see what will happen to you. They will follow you. They will beat you up. If you are not careful, they will even kill you to demonstrate that even 1,000 naira is not small. Second, you see me as you see me. I have a PhD in engineering. I have operated reasonably well in the public system. But my mother was a very, very poor mother. She had one hand. She brought me up and 9 others. But let me tell you, that same woman knows how to smoke fish. She knows how to make soap. She was frying akara and kose and pinkaso for us. She can do so many things. So literally I was born by a professor of enterprise, but she had nothing. I swear to God, if my mother had that 5,000 naira that you think is small now, I would have gone to University of Maiduguri with a car. This is what we're seeing now. Those houses that you think are primitive and small, we're giving them 5,000 naira. The women are coming together. There is a community where we saw kuli kuli and oil extraction community from the 5,000. 1,000 can buy 2 or 3 mudus of granules. They have the skill and they're processing it and they're creating wealth and they're expanding to the extent that they were able to buy a bus and dedicate it as an ambulance to take their sick from the village to the town. We've seen communities where they've built classrooms in their community schools based on this 5,000 and so on and so forth. So the bottom line is the country must understand that it has a problem and it must be able to deploy resources, not just financial, but also human resources, build capacity and build the human capital to do that and sustain it.
Well, those are quite very interesting revelations. But before we let you go, I would like to ask just this one more questions. Now, Nigeria's population has continued to rise in recent times. We're also seeing that it's projected to be about 400 million by 2050. Now, with this rising population, how can Nigeria as a country cope, with this rising number of poverty?
Well, actually, the factor of population is being discussed technically at many, many levels. But the solution is very clear. China, as the most populated country, is demonstrating to the world that population is not really a big deal. You can develop and you can develop quickly, but the solution is that your schools must be good. You must make sure that your young people go to school. You have to innovate, and you must have very, very creative thinking to take advantage of the economics of the world. China has penetrated Nigeria. When you see trains in Nigeria, it's Chinese trains. When you see roads constructed in Nigeria, majority are constructed by China is giving Nigeria loans. They recognize this. It's only because of their capacity. Nigeria has to understand that this expansion of population can be turned into an opportunity, but it cannot be an opportunity if you don't build your human capital properly. This country has over 240 universities, full-fledged. No African country has this capacity infrastructure. But the question is, what are you using that capacity for? The linkage between our knowledge system and our developmental requirements are very weak. We have to make sure that our researchers are researching Nigerian problems. We have to make sure that our innovators are innovating Nigerian solutions. We have to make sure that capacity build is relevant for Nigeria. This is the way to go. It is intangible. You can't see knowledge. You can't see a professor who is not wearing nice clothes. You think he's an idiot. You push him out, but he may change the economy of this country. Absolutely. This is the secret for Nigeria, and it has to understand this if we're actually to crack some of these challenges and move forward.
Interesting tidbits there from the former special advisor, assistant to the president on social investment, currently the national coordinator of the National Social Investment Program. I'm talking about Dr. Umar Buba Bindir, who has been with us in the last couple of minutes dissecting Nigeria's poverty index and what we can do as a country, collectively, as a people, individually, as a community, to advance the cause of this country and move our people from where they currently are to where we desire for them to be. It's a pleasure to have had you in the studio, share your thoughts and perspective with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
We hope
And we hope to have you next time.
yeah, we look forward to when next you come. Hopefully the numbers would have improved. Our social context and situations globally would also have improved, and we'll be looking at what developments have changed and what we need to do going forward.